What's up, everybody? Oh, do you feel like we were just doing this? We were. And you know what happened? We think that last night's live stream, if you followed it, we were doing the, Alex Terrible. We were doing the election. We think we tapped out on like our 6-hour live stream for the day. So literally, we used up all the time that we had available to us in a single 24-hour period live streaming yesterday. All right, enough of that. What an evening. I left the office, and I went home after starting the live stream at home office, coming here because we lost it. Election interference. No. It was just, things went sideways, right? And so you got to start over. So I left here, and it's still, and that was maybe about 10 o'clock last night. I left here, and I mean, it was looking like Trump was going to win, and it was looking like a bunch of those other races were close. But when I got home, all of a sudden, it was one of those deals where I think it was CNN called it for Trump. MSNBC called it for Trump, and I was just, holy smokes, this is really happening. This is going down like this. Because I had predicted that Kamala Harris would win. I said, I don't think they're going to let Trump win. I really don't. I have never been so happy to be wrong ever, right? Just, so glad I'm wrong. So glad I'm wrong. That was a wild win. And some of the things that I was talking with my son, Kiernan, who I believe here is on the live stream, is how are the betting odds so dialed in and the polls so wrong? How does that work? Because the betting odds had Trump ahead. I mean, favorably ahead. Way in advance. And then as the evening just rolled on, boom, it was, it just became wildly apparent. And how about Kamala Harris dipping out and just crying and going home? And that was way early, right? Nobody had said anything about Trump winning at that point in time. I mean, it was clear that he had a path to do it. But, Kamala Harris party, they must have gotten intel. They must have had enough notice where she didn't do her speech at Howard University, right? She just didn't. So many other things happened. George Gascon, the prosecutor down in Los Angeles, he lost wildly. We're going to talk about that. Sheng Tao, mayor of Oakland, got recalled. Pamela Price, district attorney in San Francisco, she got recalled. Senate Republicans ran the Senate. I mean, that was just an evening. Let's jump into it. Let's get into it. I'm just going to read, a handful of stuff that I've got going on here that I've been collecting. And I was debating whether I was going to live stream this morning or not. And I thought, you know what? We just got to live stream this stuff out, get it out of our system, and then I'll individually do these stories. But wild evening. Just some crazy stuff went down. And so much of it was, I believe, because we were told that it was going to be really, really close. And it wasn't. It was a rout. It was a rout. And I blame most of that on mainstream media just, wanting it to be close. Hey, if we say this enough times, maybe it'll happen. And that just didn't happen. One of the things I saw from ABC last night, my time, Seattle time, probably about midnight, I ended up watching returns. I ended up watching CNN and MSNBC until 2 o'clock in the morning, Seattle time, about 5 o'clock in the morning, East Coast time. It was some good stuff because they're all sitting around going, I can't believe this happened. And then just literally kissing Trump's ass, right? I mean, everybody's coming out of the woodwork and just all of a sudden, oh, good Lord. Since he's president, need to recall some of those things that we talked about. Here's NPR. Here's National Propaganda Radio. Donald Trump has won the presidential election and will return to the White House. Do you need to say that he's going to return to the White House? Isn't that kind of implied? This is national propaganda radio, though. Here's how most of this goes down. Former President Donald Trump will return, according to a race called by the AP. Now, the AP called it fairly early on. They were one of those folks that, oh, yeah, oh, good Lord, do we call this for Trump? And they did. Trump won the key states of Wisconsin and Pennsylvania with a combined 29 electoral votes to clinch the 270 necessary as of 5:34 a.m. Wednesday. So I was not watching at that point in time, but I had dipped out maybe half an hour before because I had to go to bed. You know what I mean? Trump had 277 electoral votes. Prior to the race call for Wisconsin, Trump spoke. He had a great speech. My dad watched it, and he said it was pretty good. But you know what? It's easy to do a speech when you're the winner. When you are the winner, you know, spoils go to the victor, right? I saw clips of that speech. Here's how, okay, so we are how many paragraphs in? We're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Trump said that he won the popular vote, but those results have not been fully tabulated. Okay, but more than likely he did. Here's where NPR jumps in. He will return to the White House after falsely claiming the 2020 election was rigged and stoking the January 6th attack on the Capitol. He is also the first convicted felon to win the White House. Interesting how they point that out right off the bat, right? That's what you're going to hear over and over and over again. Oh, he's a convicted felon. He stoked January 6th. Republicans say Trump won the election for one simple reason. Voters felt that they were better off 4 years ago than they were today. In watching ABC, I started touching on that earlier. It came down to one guy, and I think this was probably about 1 a.m. Seattle time. One guy stating, all right, there was too much of the abortion and trans rights and not enough of the border and inflation. That's what decided this. And you know what? It's absolutely right. People are tired of this woke nonsense. It's just not. I mean, the whole abortion thing, it's like, all right, if that's your thing, this is America, you're still going to be able to get an abortion. If that's really what is hindering your decisions on life in general, you know, having some unprotected sex and getting pregnant and not taking responsibility for how your actions go. And if you can't work out how to use a plan B, you know, you've got all these things out there that you can do. And then the whole trans thing, nobody cares about that. But people do care about all the implications of the southern border and all the implications directly in their life with the economy and inflation, because we can't afford stuff that we used to be able to afford. And I think people were able to look at Trump 2016 through 2020, and then the last 4 years we've been through. I know the last 2.5 years have been horrific for me from a business standpoint. And I'm a real estate guy, right? And we knew you had, you know, those glory years during the pandemic and then boop, you know, fell off a cliff, right? You know, you're going to have some ups and downs, but not like these ups and downs. So voters felt that they were better off 4 years ago than they were today. Absolutely. And you know what I think it was? A lot of this is, there's a lot of folks that were closet Trump voters. They didn't want to tell anybody because as a Trump voter, you get ostracized, you get demeaned. People tell you you're an idiot. How can you vote for a rapist and a convicted felon? Well, take a look into those cases, folks. And we're hiring somebody to run the leader of the free world, right? I mean, that's what we're kind of doing. Democrats, where they just wildly went off track, is number one, thinking that Sleepy Joe had another 4 years in him, and then handing Kamala Harris basically a losing hand from the get-go and not running her campaign like Trump ran his, which is 9,000 campaign stops, 3-hour, Joe Rogan podcasts. He went absolutely to the wall. I mean, the guy's 78. And then you got Biden, who can't work his way off a stage and, can't really. They didn't want him to stump for Harris. So the whole thing just live updates. Trump wins 2024 election. Democrats hope for House control. And, Republicans took the Senate. I mean, just a wild, wild evening, right? Kamala Harris will not speak as tearful supporters leave watch party. I mean, that's the part where I was like, oh, okay, so if Kamala Harris wins, I mean, we didn't know, and we didn't know how bad it was, clearly. If Kamala Harris wins, she's going to address everybody tomorrow. She's going home. And that's where I was sitting here talking to you guys or, watching whatever was going on. And it was one of those things where I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I'm sitting in a room at 9 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, whatever it was. Actually, the timestamp on this was 10:46 p.m. So 7:46. No, is that East Coast time? Eyewitness News, 7, Chicago. So 2 hours ahead. So 8:46 my time, Kamala Harris goes home and leaves her watch party. That's where I was like, what kind of presidential hopeful leaves their party not knowing if she's going to win or not? Well, clearly the Harris campaign had, she had results in from all the ballot boxes and all the counting. And it was wildly clear early on just how much of a rout this was going to be. And it was a rout. It wasn't even close. I mean, the polls had us believing that we were going to be counting these damn votes for weeks. Oh, yeah, in the mail-in ballots, it's going to take a long time to get there. It's going to take a long time to get there. That just didn't happen. I mean, they basically called it early this morning. Just, everybody had called it by early this morning. Just boom, done. Kamala Harris will not speak as tearful supporters leave the watch party. You know what? We got to watch this because this kind of tells you everything right here. This guy.
Still have votes to count. We still have states that have not been called yet. We will continue overnight to fight to make sure that every vote is counted, that every voice has spoken. So you won't hear from the vice president tonight, but you will hear from her tomorrow. She will be back here tomorrow to address not only the HU family, not only to address her supporters, but to address the nation. So thank you. We believe in you. May God bless you. May God keep you. And go HU and go Harris. Thank you all.
Never an easy moment for whatever campaign has to make that announcement into the evening and say, hold on here, and we're gonna hold out hope in the early morning hours.
My thing was hold out hope. You went home. You went home. You don't go home until the fat lady sings, right? I mean, we can't say fat anymore. Gravity challenged, I think somebody told me last night, She just went home. Vice President Kamala Harris will not be speaking on election night, went into Wednesday morning. I mean, just a total crater. An absolute crater. Harris supporters crying as results continue to come in. Do you think Crooked Hillary called Kamala Harris last night? Yo, Kamala, I know just how you feel. Oh, that can't be good. Yeah. It's like when Bill got caught with the stain on the blue dress with, Monica. The mood at Howard University had dampened over the last couple of hours. The night started out. Let's do that. Night started out with music pumping and crowds dancing. Later on in the evening, limited crowds watched as the results came in, with many glued to the screen. It was really interesting on the live stream last night. I've never done an election. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't have a lot of my mechanics down, but I wanted to do that one to kind of share that with you anyway. I'm bummed that I didn't get to ride it into like midnight my time and really watch Trump, basically take the race But I went home and I got to do it by myself. So thanks for joining today. This is kind of what this is. This is closure for all of that. The crowd cheered anytime races are called for Harris and booed whenever states were called for Trump. Former President Donald Trump was reported to be riding over to the convention center with his family and his top campaign leadership team. I had somebody on the, they're not on the chat, but somebody texted me, an ardent fan, you know who you are, and he tried to get as close to Mar-a-Lago as he could, where Trump was hanging out with Tucker Carlson yesterday, I believe. I think that's the story anyway. Yeah, how about Dana White, Tucker Carlson, and a bunch of guys who basically believe the same things that we do not in mainstream media, but in conservative media. They are the ones kind of running things now because mainstream media has essentially taken themselves out by promoting all of these polls, which clearly were wildly inaccurate, not even close. So if you can't get your job done as a pollster, what are you doing? And mainstream media, if you can't accurately figure out how this is going to go, well, get somebody in there that can, because the the betting polls, yeah, right? And the whole thing is just like, what's going on? Here's a good question. Here's a great question. Where was Sleepy Joe in all this? What happened to Sleepy Joe? I mean, we saw Trump and all his family. Man, that Barron, that guy is tall. I know Trump says he's 6'9", but, is that guy 6'7"? Maybe he's 6'9" if he stands all the way up. But, geez, if you're that young and you're that tall, you're probably going to hunch over a little bit so you fit in, right? Kid is tall. Where is Joe Biden now? Here's how U.S. president spent the election night. Remember? This is still our president. This is our president. This is our guy right here. A yellow button. There it is. There it is. We're going to do a little circle around Sleepy Joe. Now, what happened? I mean, they literally just sidelined Sleepy Joe, right? When it became apparent, oh yeah, we can't milk him anymore. The guy has literally lost. What they did to him is elder abuse. Hey, Joe, you got another 4 years in you? I think so. And he just didn't. He's mentally got dementia. And yet that's on the Democrats. That's on the Democrats for poor planning, thinking he could squeeze 4 more out of Sleepy Joe. U.S. election results. Joe Biden watched the elections unfold from the sidelines at home. As millions of Americans tuned into the unfolding drama of Election Day, President Joe Biden experienced a bittersweet evening far from the public eye. He wasn't even there with Kamala Harris. And you know why? Because I think they had a bad idea. They had a bad idea that if this doesn't go well, we've got to distance Joe Biden from Kamala Harris, because either one were a terrible call, right? Kamala Harris, I mean, how did she even do as well as she did? She's got no skills. She basically, she went against everything that she originally believed in her, Senate years. And she just flip-flopped on everything. She can't speak. She can't do more than a half an hour long interview. So she certainly can't do a 3-hour interview. Instead of doing the Joe Rogan podcast, she did Club Shay Shay and Call Her Daddy, a sex therapist type podcast. That's what it used to be anyway. Not denigrating those podcasts at all, but they're not the Joe Rogan show. And she could have been on there. All of that, none of that would have helped her, I don't think, because the United States said, you know what? We're tired of this woke nonsense. We're tired of the nonsense we're being fed by mainstream media. Let's go find something else. Let's go do something else. Screw this. Screw your woke agenda. And let's hammer down on making America great again. Somebody said last night, Sean, you need to come up with a merchandise line that's make America reasonable again. And we're going to run with that. We're going to get hats, t-shirts, make America reasonable again. It won't be red. It'll be like dark blue. And, go a little different direction. Make America reasonable again. That seems reasonable to me. Let me know what you think. Washington Post reports that Biden, who until recently was expected to be on the ballot himself as president, retreated to the White House residence with a small circle of family and close advisors. For a guy who gave 40 years to the Democratic Party, they just took an enormous crap on him at the end. They really did. They just boop, you're no longer, worth anything to us. And basically they just shunted him and cut him off. And he tried to do, these speeches, and that's the kind of macho guy you want to smack him in the ass. And you could just see Kamala Harris going, get him off the mic. Somebody cut his mic. He's just talking nonsense. Yeah, you just macho guys just want to smack him in the ass. And you're like, what? I'm sorry. How is this help? How are you helping with this kind of speech? And then he's basically calling us, Trump fans, Trump supporters, garbage. Huh. Yeah. It's one thing, Sleepy Joe, when a comedian says it, because there's this freedom of speech thing where you can say funny stuff and it sometimes might be offensive, but that's what makes it funny. And if you're offended, what does Candace Owens say? Life's tough, get a helmet. I mean, fair enough, right? There, he watched the election results that would shape not only the nation's future, but his legacy as well. The man who once dominated the political stage now found himself a spectator. That was wild. I mean, this is literally 3 months ago, right? When that happened. Just, Sleepy Joe, bring it in, Kamala Harris. The quiet evening marked a poignant shift for Biden, who has been at the center of countless election nights, whether as a senator or presidential candidate. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware described Biden's mood as optimistic. Last night, I kept throttling what I was saying. I wanted to say, hey, look at that. This is looking good. But you know what I had in my head when I went to sleep, election night 2020, and I woke up the next morning and Joe Biden surged ahead in Pennsylvania. And I was like, gosh darn it, this absolutely sucks. This absolutely sucks. I remember thinking, I don't want to, on a big podcast platform like YouTube, go down that road and have people say, I told you Trump wasn't going to win. I've been happy to be wrong this entire time, right? However, the evening carried a somber undertone as initial results didn't look good for Harris. Washington Post states Biden remained behind closed doors, making calls to key Democratic figures. Nobody took his call, but avoiding public appearances, even as Harris's supporters rallied nearby. He was shunned out of the spotlight, not even to the point of being there. Hey, Joe, I want you to show up. Appreciate the 40 years you gave us your life. You made some money. You made some millions. You had that whole deal in Ukraine with Hunter, Biden, with Biden Jr. He got out what he put in as well. But they literally just got rid of him, right? Just took him to task. All right, enough of the Trump. Go Trump 2024. Will Trump deport 8 million people? No. Is he going to do tariffs? Like, 200% tariff or whatever on China, whatever it is. No, I don't think he is. Just like Kamala Harris was never going to give out $25,000 to first-time home buyers. Just like Joe Biden didn't give all the college students, take their student debt and say, he did it in specifics and it just didn't work. How about this one? Los Angeles voters overwhelmingly oust far-left DA George Gascon. He's a George Soros guy, right? Los Angelinos, tired of increased crime and rampant homelessness, overwhelmingly voted out soft on crime. Far-left district attorney George Gascon on Tuesday in favor of Nathan Hochman, a prosecutor with a more moderate approach. So that's Nathan Hochman he was a deputy district attorney underneath George Gascon. And I'm reading these stories because these are stories all where we basically, folks in the United States woke up and said, I use those words sparingly, and said, we don't want this kind of nonsense. And so even folks in Los Angeles, you had homelessness and crime just absolutely spike when you had a guy like George Gascon get in office. Hochman, a former federal prosecutor and a Republican turned independent, you can't get elected in a blue state if you're Republican. So you got to do that independent move, right? He won the race with a 61.5% of the vote to Gascon's 38.5%. That's a thumping. Because even in liberal Los Angeles, people recognized, Yeah, I want to be able to walk outside after like 6 p.m. and not either get sexually assaulted or, assaulted by a homeless individual, have my house broken into, have my car broken into. And that's a real reality when you've got a guy like Gascon who is basically not putting the bad guys away and believes that justice consists of letting the bad guys run around willy-nilly. And also, I didn't pull this one up, but Proposition 36 in California passed, which basically it helps to repeal some of the impacts from Proposition 47. That was the one that took crimes that were felonies, made them misdemeanors, also enacted if it's under $950, you can go ahead and shoplift all day long. It'll just be a misdemeanor. Good luck out there with your shoplifting career. So some of those things you're starting to see roll through, and it's because people are fed up and tired of all this absolute ridiculousness, even in California. So I was reading a few days ago about how the housing crisis, the supply of housing crisis, is starting to ease. It's starting to ease. And you might think, that's great. We're building more houses. Well, it's not. It's people are moving away from the highly populated areas where you've got housing shortages, and they're going to red areas where you've got more housing. So you haven't changed up the housing component at all. You've just got a population shift. Super interesting, but it makes sense because in these liberal areas, you've got super expensive housing because you got restrictions and you're in these dense urban centers, don't have the ability to build except for up. And right now, 2024, whole bunch of multifamily has come online, but our pipeline moving forward with multifamily housing is very minimal. You don't have it. And a lot of that has to do with the interest rate environment, ability for builders to build. But hey, we got number 47 in an office. And what real estate guy doesn't like a low interest rate, right? Expect to see some of that. He doesn't have the ability to run the Fed, clearly, but he can make recommendations. You know what? You know what I think would be a good idea? You can go down that road, right? He can get there that way. Keep going. LA County District Attorney, one of the most progressives in the country, loses re-election. There's our guy, got thumped because he's a moron. He ran on that campaign of 2020, which was, hey, letting everybody out of prison is going to be a swell idea. Let's see how this goes. And even in California, they recognized, maybe that's not the brightest idea in the world. Here we go with this one. How about this? East Bay votes to recall DA Pamela Price. Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao. Very difficult to get people ousted like that in a recall. Now, we had San Francisco's attorney general or district attorney, Chesa Boudin. Remember, his parents were in prison and he just wants to let everybody out. Well, they got a recall on him. So this is the third major figure in this geographic area, East Bay, basically being Oakland, right? To have this happen. So we've been following these stories. If you're new here to News for Reasonable People, I've covered both of these in depth. And it's because you got a bunch of people that they believe that justice reform means literally letting the bad guys out or just never arresting them in the first place. And what could go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Well, now I have concern about the crime levels, even though the FBI is telling us, crime's down. Oh, wait a minute. No, it's back up. Yeah. East Bay voters had their say on whether to recall Alameda County District Attorney Pamela Price and Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao. And it looks like they chose to send both packing. Get these. 65.2 to 34.8 for Tao. 64.8 to 35.2 for Price. Those are massive margins and they're almost identical. That's wild. So even in Oakland, even in the San Francisco type area, their folks are going, maybe, just maybe we made a mistake with our progressive policy, and we'll just have to see how that works out. Here in the state of Washington, I don't have a story up on it, but Andrea Suarez, who many of you know, I've gone out on litter picks and basically going through homeless encampments as she does outreach, did story on Steve Irwin, who was excavating a park, homeless dude, and he was digging for gold, and he had a mining operation going on. I went and videoed with her. She ran a campaign for city council last night, did not get elected, and her opponent was a socialist Democrat, very progressive. I'm sure that's going to work out just swimmingly for Seattle, instead of having somebody who is going out and actually making a difference in the community. So here in Seattle, that's what we're still dealing with. Andrea, you ran a great campaign. I know folks, a lot of folks voted for you that wouldn't vote for somebody with a D, by their name normally, but you've made a difference in Seattle. Thank you for your efforts. I'm sorry, that race didn't go, but you ran a good race. That's what you can say there. And in Seattle, people don't want to see, hey, somebody's actually not using taxpayer dollars and they're cleaning up millions of pounds of garbage, literally millions of pounds of garbage. So, but let's go ahead and, let's throw in this ultra progressive Democratic socialist, because that worked out so well with Shama Sawant. Our nut job that encouraged all of CHOP and Chaz and the riots and all that ridiculousness. Both officials are progressive women of color elected in 2022. Progressive women of color. Isn't that what Kamala Harris was? Yeah. So Trump 2-0 against female potential presidential candidates. They have criticized the recall efforts against them as being waged by billionaires. You mean people with money who don't want to see their environments absolutely destroyed by your terrible policies? And so they throw a little bit of money into a campaign to get you recalled because you're so bad? You mean that? Oh, okay. But both had political blunders that drove enough residents to sign petitions to put the recall on the ballot. And by blunders, you mean people being killed by convicted felons that should never have been let out on the streets to begin with? You mean a blunder like that? Kind of like Kamala Harris's blunder at the border as border czar resulted in young females 10, 11, 12 being raped and murdered? A blunder? All right. Okay. Anywho, Price, the first black woman to hold the district attorney post in Alameda County, assumed office as part of a wave of progressive prosecutors seeking to reform criminal justice across the nation. And that was due to Fentanyl Floyd, and a bunch of other people at the same time. Well, most of that has been worked back because that whole thing its course is gone and done and over. We're no longer doing that because when you went down these, these avenues of justice reform, it just literally means letting the bad guys out, letting them roam around, and we'll just see how this goes. And it hasn't gone all that well, even to the point where an extremely progressive society like East Bay or San Francisco, they're saying, you know what? We have concern. Maybe we need to make a change. Maybe we need to do something different here. Price's opponents organized against her just 6 months into her 6-year term. 6 months in, and people are like, good Lord, we made a mistake. This woman is horrible. But you know what? She did exactly what she said she was going to do. It's just like Let's Go Brandon Johnson in Chicago. He is doing exactly what he said he was going to do, which was just be a progressive, pro-justice reform, anything you can think of that's a bad idea, he implements and says, well, this is progress. This is what progressives do. So Save Alameda for Everyone, which raised nearly $4 million for the recall, argued that she was reducing sentences for criminals, check, refusing to charge violent felons, check, and failing to support victims of crime, check. So if your office, if that is literally what your job is supposed to be and you're failing to do all those, it's the same thing as those guys in the poll. What are they even doing? It's going to be a close one. Guys, want to go to bed because we're not going to know until, not even tomorrow, but day after day because it's so tight and they got to count those ballots by hand and, put them up in hieroglyphics in a cave because what else could be taking it that long to count all these votes, right? And some of those states need to hurry that up. There's no reason with computers the way that we have it today that they can't just, know instantly. But that's a whole nother story. Her office missed deadlines to file charges in more than 1,000 misdemeanor cases that have been sitting on her desk for a year. Oops. Sorry about that. Yeah, hey guys, your docket's cleared. You got nobody. Tao also faced criticism for being soft on crime. Organizers of Tao's recall said the effort was sparked by the mayor's management of the police department, particularly by firing Chief LaRon Armstrong. Police have been thrown under the bus. And you know what? Folks don't need to worry about cops shooting their citizens. They need to worry about other citizens shooting their citizens. Because if you look at the data, that is what's going on. Anything else, and you're just, we're going to go down this far left. And so much of the far left has, it's just been, unless you're here in Seattle, that stuff's kind of going by the wayside, right? Here's California Proposition 36 passed by voters. California, let's see if I can get this going a little bit better. California voters approved Proposition 36 this election, weighing in on a measure aimed at reversing certain criminal policies under the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. Boy, they went for it all, right? This is the trifecta of, hey, let's reverse terrible policy that Democrats put in place. Let's reverse terrible progressive policy that makes no sense. But you know what? We're just going to keep rolling it out and trying it because that's not the definition of crazy. But it is. Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. That sounds like the Inflation Reduction Act, doesn't it? Which we all know didn't reduce inflation. In fact, it created more inflation because you dumped a bunch of money into an already overheated economy. In simple terms, Proposition 36 seeks to clarify certain crimes for stricter penalties. For instance, proposition would make possessing fentanyl, along with a firearm, a felony. Good. And then incarcerate them for a while. Get them off the street. Don't care. Additionally, offenders convicted under Proposition 36 would be required to serve their full sentence in state prison. Not at home, not with the little ankle bracelet, right? Hey, that's cute. Regardless of prior criminal history. Good. Sentencing could also be extended based on the quantity of drugs involved in the offense. Proposition 36 also focuses on theft crimes. All right, you get a proposition in, if you've still got the same judges, if you guys still got the same prosecutors who aren't willing to prosecute because they know, hey, other end, nobody's going to do any time, then all the propositions in the world aren't going to make a difference. But at least this is going in the right direction, right? I mean, none of this stuff is going to be able to be overcome, quickly. California is a dumpster fire that we are watching in super slow-mo happen. East Bay, dumpster fire. Areas of Seattle, dumpster fire. Portland. I mean, why did the National Guard in Portland and Washington, and where else was it? Was it Nevada, I think, called in the National Guard over the elections, but they wouldn't call the National Guard in over the Black Lives Matter riots? How exactly does that work, right? How is that a thing? Republicans take Senate majority and unified power with Trump. So you got this storyline going on. I think we still don't know the House. If an update's come on since I've been on this podcast, let me know. But I think that's going to take a while, right? That's going to take a bit to get to and count all those votes. And I think they've got, before I started this podcast, there was 50 undecided races yet to be decided. So we're not sure about the House. Republicans have taken control of the U.S. Senate and are fighting to keep their majority in the U.S. House, which would produce a full sweep of GOP power in Congress alongside President-elect Donald Trump in the White House. This is that red wave that we were expecting in 2020 that never came about because I don't think Republicans took it seriously. They didn't get out and vote. This election they did. I was reading some of the exit poll stats. Latinos came out in droves and voted. You know, I mean, that's just an interesting deal. And young men came out in droves in support of Donald Trump. Now, I know a lot of them had to lie to their girlfriends and wives and say, oh, yeah, I voted for Kamala Harris, because they want to keep having sex at some point in time in their lives. And they feel like if they vote for Donald Trump, who's going to be a far better leader than Kamala Harris, than Heels Up Harris, that's going to be a difficult relationship obstacle to overcome. So they basically just lied to their girlfriends and wives and said, oh, yeah, voted for her. And behind their backs, they've got their fingers crossed. And you know what? That is literally what happened, because the conversations I've had with so many young people are, hey, don't tell my girlfriend this, but I didn't vote for Kamala Harris, because good Lord, what respecting young male is going to go down that route. I mean, you might as well just have a sign on your forehead that says cuck, right? I mean, a unified Republican grip on Washington would set the course for Trump's agenda. Or if Democrats wrest control of the House, it would provide an almost certain backstop with veto power over the White House. This has been a wild turn of events. Trump, speaking early Wednesday at his election night party in Florida, said the results delivered an unprecedented and powerful mandate for Republicans. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. Oh, here we go. Here's some of the suck up happening, right? This is what I was talking about. Jeff Bezos, Sam Altman, Tim Cook, and other tech leaders congratulate Trump on election win. And so did owner of Dallas Mavericks. That guy is Mark Cuban. Such a tool. He's been arguing with Musk. Is Elon Musk going to be in the Trump administration? I mean, he's only got SpaceX, and then he's got Tesla. He's got 12 children. He's on the Joe Rogan podcast, every other episode. Is that guy going to be in the administration? I hope so, because what could possibly go wrong there, right? He's a loose cannon, and I love him. I think he's great. Tech CEOs weighed in on the presidential-elect Donald Trump because they realized that they're going to have to do business with him. And, Trump has said, Trump went after Fox. He went after Fox even in his speech last night. He's like, Fox doing me dirty. Leaders of major technological companies congratulated President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect J.D. Vance on their victory in the U.S. presidential election Wednesday. Their messages were similar, with CEOs remarking that they wish Trump success when he returns to the Oval Office. Even Tiffany Henyard, Tiff, the super mayor, did a little post on Facebook and said, congrats, Trump, even though, she did a scathing post and said, you got to get out and vote. And you got to vote for Kamala Harris. Democracy is at stake. But then when the other guy wins, you're like, democracy is fine, but you still, we want to work together. Let's get that unity thing going. Whereas just, a day ago, we weren't talking about unity. We were talking about how badly Trump was a threat to democracy. And you know what? Over half the United States said, no, you're wrong, right? You're fired. So we got Jeff Bezos, Amazon here, but now he's in Florida. Isn't it funny that a guy that started one of the biggest companies in the world here in a garage in Bellevue, Washington, where I am, literally it's just down, it's that direction. I could walk there, it'd take me an hour, but I could get there. Now lives in Florida. Yeah, I got to get the heck out of this Democrat-run state, even though I own the Washington Post. It's one of those liberal newspapers out there. But he didn't endorse Kamala Harris because he knew there was a chance that Trump might win. And, that'd be bad for business. So these guys know which side their bread is buttered on. Tim Cook, right? Apple. Congratulations, President Trump, on your victory. We look forward to engaging with you and your administration to help make sure the United States continues to lead with and be fueled by ingenuity, innovation, and creativity. Tim Cook, you're just sucking up. Simple as that, right? Simple as that. Sam Altman. All right. Congratulations to President Trump. I wish for his huge success on the job. Really? Really? It's kind of like Mark Cuban. Hey, congrats, you earned it. It's the right thing to do, but it's just so disingenuous, right? And it's full of nonsense. All right, I'm going to go to my Discord channel here. We've got some, how about this story here? Let's see if this one pops up. Well, the story doesn't pop up. Anti-Trump monument pops up commemorating Stormy Daniels' unflattering description of Donald Trump's you-know-what. I mean, a statue. All right, here is Governor Kotex. Kotex warns against election violence, would deploy National Guard if needed. Okay, so she does it here. This is the governor of Oregon, of course. And Jay Inslee here in the state of Washington did the same thing. They would deploy the National Guard if needed. Oh, you mean because Antifa's rioting? Because of that? Because Trump won? Because of that? They did arrest 5 people in Seattle last night that were on a pro-Palestinian rant, and they were causing some property damage in the chop zone. What was it? It was Pike and 11th and Pike and 13th, which is literally the northwest quadrant where the East Precinct sits. So Governor Tina Kotex issued a reminder against election violence on Tuesday, saying any attempts to undermine the election will be stopped. So they bring out the National Guard now, but not when we really needed it, when Black Lives Matter was literally tearing the streets and cities apart. How does that work? In an email to the Capitol Chronicle, spokesperson Roxy Mayer said any voter intimidation or criminal acts aimed at undermining the election would not be tolerated, and that the governor's office is closely monitoring the situation. Yeah, but you couldn't work out how to do that before. So what's the deal now? I mean, what are you thinking about? How about this one? I'm just going through some random stories here that caught my eye that I thought were funny. And you know what? You guys can all access our Discord channel. It's free. Just join Discord. Come and find News for Reasonable People. It's got our logo on it, and you can post these stories all day long. If you want to send stories to me, you just copy and paste a link, stick it in there, stick a title. You know what I mean? You can just put a word in and I'll get it because it'll be right there. So I got a lot of folks that send me stories that way. Madison County, this is in Chicago, Illinois, votes yes on separation from Cook County. November 5th, 2024, Madison County voters were asked an advisory question about the possibility of separating from Cook County. Cook County has become such a dumpster fire of Democratic control and progress with progressive leadership, like, you know, the general, let's go Brandon Johnson, mayor of Chicago, progressive. I mean, that's kind of your figurehead. It's all going to go sideways from there. And yet there's a lot of constituents in these counties who say, we don't want this kind of ridiculousness. We want to secede from the union. The question read, shall the board of Madison County correspond with the boards of other counties of Illinois outside of Cook County about the possibility of separating from Cook County to form a new state and to seek admission to the union as such, subject to the approval of the people? That's a question that was on the ballot. Madison County voters who voted yes supported advising the Madison County Board to discuss separation from Cook County, while no votes opposed the idea. Madison County, 56.54 voted yes. Meanwhile, 43 said no. This is like Greater Idaho, right? Where you take half of Eastern Oregon, blend it in with Idaho, because the eastern portions of Idaho, northern portions of California, eastern portions of Washington, they all want to secede from the population centers, which are on the West Coast portion, and are just loaded up with people that are, you know, have a mentality that makes no sense, and their policies are literally running the big cities into the ground. But you know what? It's all good. Don't worry about it. You know, crime is, you know, big city crime. That's the pushback, right? Hey, you're always going to have this. More information will be available soon about what this means for Madison County and its position in Illinois. Following that Greater Idaho story, it's not going to happen anytime soon. It would take an act of Congress to make that move. None of these things are happening anytime soon, but it's interesting that that's out there. Here's George Gascon again, big loser, Trump wins. All right, MSNBC. Some of these stories I just throw up, and I'm kind of like, all right, whatever. Let's see what this one was. Here's that story I was telling you about. Multiple arrests made in Seattle election night protest. Well, let's take a look at this video. I mean, why wouldn't we? We've got kill cops. This isn't looking good. What's going on?
Protest that happened in Seattle earlier. The Seattle police sending out a tweet saying that they were monitoring some protests and actually made some arrests. Let's find out what's going on with that situation. We got Fox 13's Jennifer Dowling, who was out at the scene. So, Jen, what's this protest all about and what happened?
Well, there was a group of about 30 to 50 people that were marching through the streets, wearing all black, and sometimes during this march, dragging scooters into the street, and then also leaving some graffiti behind and some property damage, according to Seattle police. We have not seen any broken windows or anything like that. It looked to be most.
And we wonder why Seattle has a shortage of police officers with something written like that. When you're dealing with knuckleheads like this, they need to be incarcerated. Make that a felony right there. If you're worried about public safety, make that a felony. Doing graffiti that says kill anybody, but particularly cops. You've got a massive shortage. Last night in Portland, I understand Central Precinct covers like downtown Portland. They were way shy cops. The numbers are startling. I mean, they are shocking. If something goes sideways in Portland, something goes sideways in Seattle, we're hosed. I have concern.
Writing on the buildings and also, again, moving those scooters around and possibly damaging those. So social media posts showed the group on Broadway and in the area of Pike and 11th and 12th earlier in the night. We don't exactly know what affiliation the group had, but Seattle police posted images that showed that a lot of the graffiti was left behind here and in Cal Anderson Park. Now, I did reach out to
Cal Anderson Park being that big park where you had, a rape, a couple of shootings, a whole bunch of homeless people. They had the garden. They had the garden only for black people, though. I watched a dude get in with his AR-15 into a tent, and I was like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore, right? Wild stuff.
SPD, they got back to me and said that all 5 arrests that were made tonight were made for property damage. Shortly after those arrests started happening, the group kind of started breaking up and then eventually completely dissolved. So it's quiet out here tonight in Capitol Hill. We did talk to a man who said that he was a little disturbed because there was a helicopter in the air, which he said was looking at the group. That was his perception, and it made him a little nervous. So some people out here were a little on edge with the police presence, but again, that particular action by the police has cleared up at this time. Reporting live in Seattle, Jennifer Dowling, Fox 13 News.
So when I was getting ready for that first live stream last night, I watched 2 military helicopters go over my house in East Bellevue. Who knows what they were doing?
Let's move on to 2117.
Who knows what they were doing? You know what? I think I've covered most all of the major stories here. So take these off because we're not doing that part. But hey, I wanted to run through some of that, share that with you. And now I'm gonna go record a bunch of podcasts, kind of breaking some of this stuff down, particularly what happened in the East Bay and in California, because those are big, huge, recalls. And that word needs to get out that, hey, even in a liberal bastion like San Francisco or Oakland, you've got people who are moderate, who are reasonable, who are saying, you know what? Maybe this pathway we've been going down is just straight up mentally deranged. And we're going to come out in droves and vote for something reasonable. That is happening out there. Will it have a huge difference? That's the question of the hour, right? But hey, there is no question. Trump 2024. Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining. I'm sorry I couldn't do an official closeout last night, but all of you that joined last night, thanks so much. Love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now. Trump 2024. Bye.